My son Mark looked at my swollen eye, the skin already turning a dark, angry purple. He wasn't looking at me with concern. He was looking at me with pride. My wife put him in his place so he'd finally shut up, he announced to the room. He said it proudly, as if the woman who had just assaulted his 70-year-old father deserved a medal. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, justifying his wife striking me. I just stood there, my heart shattering into a million pieces. Then, from the doorway, I heard a slow, deliberate clap. "Bravo, nephew," my brother Ben said, stepping into the room. "You just admitted to conspiracy to commit assault in front of 2 uniformed police officers. Before I tell you how I ended up a prisoner in my own home, please let me know in the comments where you are watching this story from. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you believe that family should mean respect, not exploitation. Your support means the world to an old engineer like me. My name is Gabriel Foster, but everyone has always called me Gabe. I'm 70 years old. For 42 years, I was a construction engineer. I built bridges, schools, skyscrapers. I built things that were meant to last. I built the very house I'm standing in right now. But lately, I don't even feel like I'm allowed to live in it. My wife Sarah passed away 2 years ago. The silence she left behind was a physical weight. It was a silence so complete, so heavy that my son Mark and his wife Amelia insisted on moving in. "To take care of you, Dad," Mark had said, his eyes avoiding mine. "You shouldn't be alone." At the time, I thought it was a blessing. I was rattling around in this big 4-bedroom house lost in echoes. Now I feel like a guest. Or maybe a piece of old furniture they haven't figured out how to get rid of yet. It started this morning. Like every morning for the past 40 years, I woke up needing coffee. The sun was just starting to cut through the kitchen blinds, lighting up the dust motes, dancing in the air. This kitchen, this was Sarah's sanctuary. Every tile, every cabinet, we picked them out together after I finished the framing. Now it felt sterile, colder. My favorite mug was on the top shelf. It's a heavy ceramic thing chipped on the rim with a faded logo of my old firm. Sarah gave it to me on my 50th birthday. It's the only one I use. I reached for it. My hand was shaking. It's the tremor. It started a few years ago. The doctor says it's mild, mostly just an annoyance, but it makes me clumsy. My fingers brushed the handle, but I couldn't get a solid grip. I tried again, stretching up onto my toes, my shoulder aching in protest. I just needed my damn coffee mug. "I'll get it." Amelia's voice cut through the quiet. It wasn't an offer. It was a command. She brushed past me close enough that I could smell the expensive floral soap on her. She's 38, sharp and restless, with a way of moving that always seems impatient, as if the rest of the world is moving too slowly for her. She snatched the mug from the shelf with an audible, theatrical sigh. "Honestly, Gabe," she said, not even looking at me. "She calls me Gabe, never Dad. Just wait for one of us. You're going to make a mess all over the counter again." She poured the coffee too fast, splashing some onto the granite, and shoved the mug toward me across the island. "Here." I took it, my hand still trembling, though this time it was more from irritation than the tremor. "I could have gotten it," I muttered, wrapping my fingers around the familiar warmth. "Sure you could have," she replied, her voice dripping with that false sweetness that's sharper than any insult. "And I would have been the one cleaning it up, again." I stood there in the kitchen I designed in the house I built, with my own 2 hands, holding the mug my dead wife gave me, feeling like a 4-year-old child who had just been scolded. Mark is my son. He's 42. He followed me into construction, but he never had the foundation for it. He wanted the title of project manager, but not the long hours on site, not the mud on his boots. He's a good man, I always told myself. He just needs direction. He's weak, easily led. And Amelia, she does all the leading. When they moved in, I thought it would be like the old days. A full house, laughter. But they didn't move into the spacious guest room. They took the master bedroom, my bedroom, Sarah's and my bedroom. It's bigger, Dad. It just makes more sense for a couple, Mark had explained, studying the pattern on the carpet. And it has the private bath. I sleep in Mark's old childhood room now. The single bed feels small. The walls are still covered in his old high school baseball pennants. I feel like I'm visiting my own past while strangers run my present. I took my coffee and retreated to the breakfast nook, a small bay window Sarah had insisted on where she used to read. Amelia stayed in the kitchen, opening and slamming cabinets with unnecessary force. I watched her over the rim of my mug. She was surveying the room like a general planning an invasion, her eyes landing on every little thing that was mine, that was Sarah's. "This is ridiculous," she said mostly to herself, but loud enough for me to hear. She grabbed an old wooden spice rack Sarah had mounted by the stove, a gift from her mother. "What is this even for? It's just clutter." "That was your mother-in-law's," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "I know, Gabe. Everything in this house was hers." She didn't say the name. She never said Sarah's name. It was always her or your wife. She slammed the coffee pot back onto the machine, the sound making me jump and slosh a little coffee onto my hand. I winced. "We really need to reorganize this kitchen," she announced, turning to face me, her hands planted firmly on her hips. "It's impossible to get anything done in here." She looked right at my mug, then at the spice rack, then at the old kettle on the stove. "Your stuff is everywhere." Her eyes were cold, assessing. It wasn't about the mug. It wasn't about the spice rack. It was about possession. She was telling me that my time here in my own home was over. She was just waiting for me to realize it. And I was starting to understand that taking care of me really just meant taking everything from me. I left her in the kitchen, her back rigid as she started scrubbing the stove with a furious energy. I needed to get away. I retreated to the living room, my mug of lukewarm coffee trembling in my hand. I just wanted 5 minutes of peace. 5 minutes to sit in my armchair, the worn leather one Sarah always said molded perfectly to my back, and just be. But the house offered no peace. Not anymore. I heard a sound, a dry, scraping sound. Scrape. Thud. I stopped in the doorway. Amelia was at the fireplace. The mantelpiece was the heart of this room. It was 40 years of our life charted in silver frames. It was our story, and she was dismantling it. A large cardboard box sat on the hearth, already half full. She had a dust rag in one hand, and in the other she held the silver-plated frame of our wedding photo. Sarah, 22 and radiant. Me, looking impossibly young in a rented tuxedo. "These are just so old," she said, not to me but to the room, as if justifying herself to the empty air. She didn't look up. She tossed the frame into the box with a careless clatter. Clatter. The sound of my wedding picture hitting the bottom of a cardboard box. "What? What are you doing?" My voice was barely a whisper. She startled, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "Oh, Gabe, I'm just cleaning. This mantle is dreadfully cluttered. It looks like a shrine. We need to modernize this space. A nice mirror, maybe a single piece of art. Something clean." She reached for the next photo. Mark, aged 5, missing his 2 front teeth, holding up a Little League trophy. Thud into the box. "Amelia, stop!" I moved forward, setting my mug down. Those are our memories." "They're your memories, Gabe. They're collecting dust." She reached for the last one. My favorite. A snapshot from our trip to Lake Michigan maybe 10 years ago. Sarah is laughing, her hair wild in the wind, her eyes squinting against the sun. It was the last vacation we took before she got sick. "Don't touch that one," I said, my voice sharp with a sudden hot anger. She picked it up anyway, looking at it with mild disinterest. "It's a nice thought, but the frame is tarnished. It just looks tacky." "Give that to me," I lunged for it faster than I thought I could. My hand closed over the frame. Gabe, let go. You're being childish. What is going on in here? Mark's voice filled the room. He was standing in the archway holding his briefcase, his tie already loosened. He looked tired. He always looked tired lately. Thank God, Mark, Amelia said, letting go of the frame so abruptly I almost dropped it. I clutched it to my chest. Your father is having an episode. I'm just trying to clean up and he's getting aggressive. I'm not aggressive, I said, my voice shaking. She's throwing her away. I looked at my son. Mark, that's your mother. She's packing away photos of your mother like it's trash. Mark looked at the box. He looked at the empty mantel. He looked at Amelia's crossed arms. And then finally, his eyes flickered to mine before landing on the floor between us. He couldn't hold my gaze. He never could when he was about to disappoint me. Mark was never a bad kid. He was just soft. Where I was granite, he was clay easily shaped by the strongest hands near him. For 30 years, those hands were mine. I pushed him through engineering school, got him his first job, bailed him out of that disastrous condo investment in '98. I was his strength. Then 5 years ago, he met Amelia at a sales conference, and her hands were stronger than mine. Dad, he said, and the weariness in his voice was profound. Dad, Amelia is right. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at the picture of Sarah in my hands. She's right, he repeated, gaining a little confidence from Amelia's approving nod. We need to move forward. We can't live in the past. This house needs to be for the living, too. Move forward, I said. This is your mother, Mark. This isn't the past. This is our family. And we are your family now, Dad, he said, gesturing between himself and Amelia. We're the ones here. We're the ones taking care of things. He took a deep breath, puffing up his chest. It was the posture he used when he was about to deliver bad news he'd been coached on. Besides, he added with a forced managerial tone, I'll be managing this house soon enough. We need to start making decisions that reflect that. I stared at him. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. Soon enough. Managing this house. My house. What did that mean? I felt a sudden chill, a primal fear that went beyond dusty photographs. It felt like a threat. Amelia, seeing she had won, walked over and slid her arm through Mark's. She smiled at me, a tight, victorious little smile. See, Gabe, we're all on the same page. We just want what's best. I was too stunned to speak. My mind was reeling, trying to parse the meaning of managing soon enough. My gaze drifted from their triumphant faces to the mahogany side table near the door. The mail. They must have just brought it in. It was a small pile. A catalog, some coupons, and something else. A white envelope with a red window. A bright red final notice printed right next to the address. I didn't even need my reading glasses to see the name. Mark T. Foster. It was a collections agency. I recognized the logo from my old days in the business. They were the aggressive ones, the ones who didn't stop. I looked at the letter. I looked at Mark. Before I could even form the question, Amelia moved. She was astonishingly fast. She darted across the room, snatched the entire pile of mail from the table and tucked it under her arm. Junk mail, she said, her smile never wavering. Just a bunch of junk mail. I'll take care of it. She turned and walked toward the kitchen. Mark following her like an obedient dog, leaving me alone in the living room clutching a picture of my wife, the empty mantel looming in front of me like a fresh grave. Junk mail. But I saw the panic in her eyes. I saw the way Mark refused to look at it. They weren't just erasing my past. They were hiding their present. And I had a terrible sinking feeling that they were planning to pay for their secrets with my future. Sleep didn't come. Of course it didn't. I lay there in Mark's narrow childhood bed, the springs digging into my hips, staring at the ceiling. The house was too quiet. A house is supposed to settle at night. It groans and sighs like a living thing. I'd known this house's language for 40 years. I knew which floorboards squeaked outside the bathroom and the exact sound the furnace made before it kicked on. But tonight the silence felt wrong. It felt strained. My mind just kept replaying the day. Amelia's hand snatching my mug. The sharp, dismissive clatter of Sarah's wedding photo hitting the bottom of that cardboard box. Mark's eyes refusing to meet mine as he sided with his wife. I'll be managing this house soon enough. And that red envelope. Final notice. I must have drifted off into a shallow, uneasy sleep because I woke up suddenly. My body was tense. The clock on the nightstand glowed with red numbers, 2:17 a.m. That wasn't what woke me. It was a sound. Voices. Not loud, but urgent. Hissing. They were coming from down the hall. From my old bedroom. I pushed the thin blanket off. My knees cracked in the cold air as I swung my legs onto the floor. The old wood bit at my bare feet. I didn't turn on a light. I moved slowly, one hand sliding along the drywall I'd installed myself. The hallway was a river of shadows, broken only by the moonlight filtering through the high window. The door to the master suite was closed, but a thin line of light glowed underneath. The voices were clearer now. It wasn't a conversation. It was an argument. I leaned in, my heart pounding a heavy, sick rhythm against my ribs. My ear brushed against the solid oak door. My door. $80,000, Amelia. It was Mark's voice, high and strained. He sounded just like he did when he was 12 and broke the neighbor's window. Panicked. How could you? 80,000. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? 80,000. The number from the letter. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't the first time. Oh God, this wasn't the first time. I leaned my head against the cool wood, the memory washing over me sharp and bitter. It was 2008, right after the market crashed. Mark had a genius tech startup that was going to revolutionize logistics. It revolutionized his bank account into nothing. It cost me $30,000 to keep the lawyers away. Sarah had been so upset. "You're enabling him, Gabe," she'd said, her hands twisting her apron. "He has to learn to stand on his own." But how could I let my son fail? Then 2015. The condo flipping scheme. It's a sure thing, Dad, buy low, sell high. He bought high and the market stalled. Another $40,000 to keep the bank from foreclosing. My money. Sarah's money. Money we had saved for our retirement, for our peace. And here it was again. $80,000. But this time it sounded different. This time Amelia was in charge. Her voice was a low hiss, sharp and cold as ice. "Will you shut up? You're going to wake him. It doesn't matter what I did. It matters how we fix it. And I already have a plan." A plan. What plan? Mark sounded desperate. "That collector. He sounded serious, Amelia. He said he knows where we live. He said He won't touch us," Amelia snapped. "He's a shark who smells blood, and we're not going to bleed. The problem will be solved by the end of the week. I told you." "How?" There was a short, heavy silence. "We just need the old man to sign the papers." The old man. Not Dad, not Gabe. The old man. I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. I wasn't a person to them. I wasn't family. I was a tool, an obstacle, a solution. The old man. I backed away from the door, my hand over my mouth, stifling the sick, sour taste that rose in my throat. I stumbled back to my room, the small, cold room with the baseball pennants, and sat on the edge of the bed. Sign the papers. What papers? What had they found? What were they planning? The final notice on the table. The $80,000 debt. And now the papers. It wasn't just about cleaning out Sarah's photos anymore. It wasn't about a stupid coffee mug. This was about money. A lot of it. My money. My house. The home I had built. They weren't taking care of me. They were positioning themselves. They were waiting for me to sign away my life. A cold, terrifying dread settled into my bones. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't modernization. This was a strategy. And I was the target. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just sat there in that narrow bed, watching the gray light of dawn creep into the room. The fear and shock from the night at the sound of their whispering voices had settled into something cold and hard in my chest. The old man signed the papers. I was no longer a grieving husband being cared for by his family. I was a problem to be solved, a resource to be tapped. I was a target. When I heard the shower start down the hall, I went to the kitchen. I made my own coffee. My hand, I noticed, was perfectly steady. The tremor that usually bothered me in the morning was gone, burned away by pure, cold adrenaline. I sat at the kitchen island, nursing Sarah's mug, and I waited. I knew it was coming today. Amelia came downstairs at 8, looking bright and refreshed. She was wearing a yellow sundress, as if it were a beautiful spring day and not the morning of a planned ambush. The performance was sickening. "Gabe, good morning," she chirped. Her voice was like warm honey, and it made my skin crawl. "Did you sleep well?" I just looked at her over the rim of my mug. I didn't say a word. Mark followed a few minutes later, already dressed in his suit, his tie knotted a little too tight. He wouldn't look at me. He just grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and mumbled, "Morning." "Oh, wonderful, you're both here," Amelia said, clapping her hands together as if she had a delightful surprise. "Mark and I had a long, productive talk last night, and we've found the most wonderful solution for everything. Here it comes." I gripped the heavy ceramic mug, its warmth the only real thing in the room. She pulled a thick, professional-looking folder from her expensive leather handbag, the one I knew I'd paid for last Christmas. She placed it on the granite island between us with a decisive thud. "Gabe," she said, leaning in with that wide, false smile, "we know you've been worried about, well, managing all this." She waved her hand around the kitchen around my house. "And with Mark taking on more responsibility for the estate, we found a program that's just perfect for someone in your situation. It's a way to make the house work for you." She pushed the folder toward me. "It just needs your signature. A few places." I didn't move. "What is it, Amelia?" "It's just some simple financial papers, Dad." Mark cut in, his voice too quick, too rehearsed. "It helps us consolidate the assets. Makes things cleaner for the future." "Cleaner," I repeated. I opened the folder. My eyes scanned past the dense paragraphs of legalese. "I'm an engineer. I've read contracts and blueprints for 42 years. I know how to find the structural core of any document, and I found it." The top of the signatory page in bold, unmistakable letters, "Reverse mortgage application." The air left my lungs. I looked up. They were watching me. Amelia with that bright, predatory smile. Mark nervously chewing the inside of his cheek. They knew I knew what this was. This wasn't managing. This wasn't consolidating. This was liquidation. This was pulling every cent of equity out of the home Sarah and I had spent 40 years paying for. This was turning our life's work into cash. Their cash. $80,000. This was their plan. They were going to pay off their secret reckless debts by selling my home out from under me while I was still living in it. They would bleed it dry, and when I finally passed, the bank would take the house. There would be nothing left. The cancer fund I wanted to start in Sarah's name. Everything. Gone. "It's a fantastic program, Gabe," Amelia pushed, sensing my hesitation. "It frees up all that money you just have locked away in the walls. Think of it. You could travel. We could modernize this kitchen like I've been wanting to." I slowly closed the folder. I pushed it back across the smooth granite. No. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room like a brick. Amelia's smile didn't just fade. It vanished. It was like a mask had been ripped off, and the face underneath was all hard angles and cold, furious eyes. "What? What did you just say?" she asked, her voice dropping, losing all its sugary warmth. "I said, no." I stood up from the stool. My voice was firm, surprising even myself. "I am not signing a reverse mortgage. I am not selling my house." "It's not just your house anymore," she hissed, abandoning all pretense. "We live here. We work here. We take care of you." "You take care of me?" I asked, the words tasting like ash. "Or do you take care of yourselves?" "How dare you!" she shrieked, her face flushing a dark, angry red. "Do you have any idea what we have sacrificed to move in here? I put my entire career on hold to move into this dusty mausoleum. We cook your meals, we clean up your messes, we are wasting the best years of our lives making sure you don't fall and break a hip." I was genuinely stunned by the venom, the pure, unfiltered resentment that poured out of her. "You owe us, Gabe," she spat, jabbing a finger toward me. "You owe us this. We are just taking what we are entitled to for all of our trouble." I couldn't speak. I looked at Mark, my son. "Mark, are you hearing this? Is this what you want?" Mark, who had been shrinking against the refrigerator, suddenly straightened up. He looked at his wife's furious face, then at mine, and he made his choice. "She's right, Dad," he said, his voice hard. "You're being selfish." Selfish. The word hit me harder than a physical blow. "You're just sitting on all this value, and for what? You don't need it. You don't do anything. But we do. We have lives to live. We have obligations. You are holding us back." The betrayal was so complete, so total, it felt like I couldn't breathe. They were a team. This wasn't just Amelia. This was Mark, too. My boy. Amelia snatched the folder from the counter, her eyes narrow slits of pure hatred. "You'll sign," she said, her voice a low, dangerous promise. "One way or another, you will sign, or you'll find out just how selfish we can really be." She grabbed Mark by the arm. "We're leaving. I can't even look at him right now." They stormed out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam, the sound rattling, the windows rattling, the very foundation of the house I built. I stood alone in the sudden, echoing silence. My coffee was cold. My heart felt like a stone. This was it. The lines were drawn. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just greed. This was a planned attack. This was a war. And they had just fired the first shot. I was left standing in the silence, the sound of the slammed door vibrating through the soles of my feet. They were gone. They had gone to work, to the gym, to live their lives, leaving me in the house. I built a house where I was now just an obstacle. My mind raced. "You owe us. You're being selfish. One way or another you will sign." They were threatening me. My own son was threatening me. The reverse mortgage. They were $80,000 in debt, and they were going to use my home, Sarah's home, to pay for their mistakes. I had to stop them. But they were right. They had me. I was a 70-year-old man with a tremor. Who would believe me against a vibrant, concerned young couple? My documents. I needed my documents. The deed, my will, my bank statements. I kept everything in the heavy fireproof filing cabinet in my study. I walked down the hall, my heart a heavy cold stone in my chest. This hallway. This was where I taught Mark to read, sitting on the floor, pointing to the words in his little picture books. Now I was walking down that same hall to protect my legacy from him. I reached the study door. It was closed. I reached into my pocket, my fingers fumbling for the old familiar keyring. I found the key to the study, the one I had used for 30 years. I pushed it into the lock. It didn't go in. I frowned, pulling it back. I looked at the key. It was the right one. I tried again. It hit something solid metal, blocking metal. I looked closer. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't my lock. The aged bronze knob and deadbolt I had installed in 1983 were gone. In their place was a new shiny brass set, the kind with a high-security deadbolt. They had changed the lock. I jiggled the knob. It was solid, locked. I heard footsteps on the stairs and turned. Amelia was coming down dressed in yoga clothes, her phone in her hand. She stopped when she saw me standing there, my hand still on the knob. Her face was a mask of bored indifference. "Why is my office locked?" I asked. I managed to keep my voice steady. "I already told you, Gabe," she said, scrolling on her phone. "It's my office now. We can't have you wandering in and misplacing things." "You changed the lock," I stated. "Of course we did." She finally looked up, her eyes flat and cold. "Mark and I need privacy for our finances. We have important documents in there now. We can't have you confusing them with your old papers." "My papers are in there," I said, the tremor finally hitting my voice, making it shake with rage. "My life is in that room, the deed to this house, my will. Sarah's things. This room wasn't just an office. It was our sanctuary. It was where Sarah and I would sit in the evenings, quiet reading. It was where I designed the addition for the nursery when Mark was on the way. The walls were lined with my awards, my blueprints, and the watercolors Sarah painted. It was the only room besides the kitchen that still felt like us. "Oh, don't be dramatic," Amelia scoffed. "We filed all your old things away. They're safe. You don't need to worry your head about them." Safe. "Amelia, open this door, now." She actually laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. "No, I don't think I will. Mark and I are managing the house. That means managing this. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm late for Pilates." She brushed past me, her shoulder bumping mine, and walked down the hall and out the front door. I stood there for a full minute, staring at that shiny brass knob. It wasn't a reorganization. It wasn't modernizing. They had put me in a cage. They had taken my bedroom. They had taken my wife's pictures, and now they had locked away my identity, my past, and my legal power. I was a prisoner in my own home. I waited. I waited until I heard the sound of her SUV engine fade down the street. I waited another 2 minutes, just listening to the silence of the house. The empty, quiet, hostile house. Then I moved. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I didn't go to the living room. I walked through the utility room, my steps quiet on the linoleum, and opened the door to the garage. The air inside was cool, smelling of motor oil, old wood, and sawdust. My space. The one place they hadn't touched because it was dirty. It was work. I walked past my workbench, past the table saw still covered in dust from my last project. I went to the tall metal storage cabinet in the corner. I unlocked it. Behind a stack of old blueprints and a heavy coil of copper wire, I pulled out a small metal box. Inside, resting on a velvet cloth, was an old flip phone, a prepaid burner phone. Sarah had laughed at me when I bought it years ago. "Who are you, Gabe?" she'd teased. "A secret agent." "I'm an engineer," I told her. "I believe in fail-safes. I believe in a backup plan." My hand was trembling again, but this time with purpose. I flipped it open. The small screen glowed to life. I still had a full battery. I sat down on an overturned drywall bucket hidden between the workbench and the wall. I pressed the number 2 on the keypad. It was the only number I had ever programmed into it. It rang. Once. Twice. A gruff, impatient voice answered. "Yeah." My throat was dry. I had to clear it. "Ben," I said. My voice cracked with a relief so profound it almost brought me to my knees. "Ben, it's Gabe." A sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Gabe, what the hell are you calling me on this line for? What's wrong? You were right. I whispered the words tearing out of me. You were right about her. They're trying to take the house, Ben. They've locked me out of my office. They're trying to make me sign papers. They're trying to erase me. The reverse mortgage. Ben's voice was a low growl. I knew it. That viper. What do I do, Ben? I'm trapped here. You listen to me. My brother's voice was no longer just a growl. It was sharp, cold steel. You do nothing. You sign nothing. You say nothing. They think you're a weak old man. Good. Let them think it. That's our advantage. I'm handling this. I'm coming. I held the small cold plastic of the burner phone to my ear, my breath fogging in the garage air. I could hear him breathing on the other end, that sharp, impatient sound I knew so well. Ben, I'm in trouble. I whispered the words, feeling heavy and stupid. Amelia. Mark. They're trying to take the house. They locked me out of my office. They're trying to force me to sign a reverse mortgage. There was a long, terrible silence on the line. It was not a calm silence. It was the silence of a pressure valve about to burst. When he finally spoke, his voice was not one of comfort. It was a low, controlled explosion. I warned you. That was all he said. Just those 3 words, but they were loaded with 5 years of frustration. Ben, I know I didn't want to believe. No, you didn't want to listen, he snapped. I told you not to let them move in. I told you 5 years ago when Mark first brought her home for Christmas. I begged you, Gabe. But you always have to see the good in people. You always want to build a bridge even when the person on the other side is holding a bomb. That's my brother Ben. 68 years old, and even in retirement, he never stopped being the most ruthless corporate lawyer in the state. We are night and day. I am the engineer. I build things up, I trust blueprints, I believe a solid foundation will hold. Ben tears things down. He finds the weak points, the cracks in the contract, the legal loopholes. He's the old fox, and I suppose, am the old trusting fool. What did you do, Ben? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. I did my job as your brother, he growled. You were bringing a complete stranger into the family, into Sarah's house. You're damn right I ran a background check. I squeezed the phone, my knuckles white. And she's trash, Gabe. She's professional grade A trash. I could hear him pacing his dress shoes, clicking on what I imagined was his polished hardwood floor. Her name wasn't always Amelia. She has 2 other last names. She's from Reno, Nevada. You know what they have in Nevada, Gabe, quick marriages and weak regulations. What are you saying? My voice was barely a whisper. I'm saying... Ben's voice dropped, and the anger was replaced by something colder, something that terrified me. That our Mark is not her first husband. He's not even her second. My legs gave out. I sank down onto the overturned drywall bucket, my back hitting the cold garage wall. What? 2? Ben said, his voice clipped and precise like he was reading from a file. Husband number 1. A small business owner in his 60s. They were married for 8 months. He died. Fell down a flight of stairs. She inherited the house and a small insurance policy. Husband number 2. A retired trucker also in his 60s. They were married for a year and a half. He died. Food poisoning. Accidental. She inherited his truck, his savings, and his pension plan. I couldn't breathe. I was just staring at a spider web in the corner of the garage, trying to process the words. Accidents. Ben, are you saying she... I'm saying she has a pattern, Gabe. And now she's moved in with you. Another man in his 70s with a fully paid-off house and a son she can wrap around her little finger. And you're telling me she wants you to sign over all your equity, that they changed the locks. My God. Gabe, you're not just in financial trouble. You are in danger. I thought of the argument I'd overheard. We just need the old man to sign the papers. They weren't just trying to pay a debt. They were trying to cash me out. You're too soft, Gabe. Ben's voice was almost sad now. I've told you your whole life. You trust too much. You want to believe Mark is just weak, that this is just about money. But you're dealing with a black widow, and your softness, it's going to get you killed. It's going to kill Sarah's legacy. I clutched the phone. What do I do, Ben? She's in the house. She's in Sarah's room. Mark, he's on her side. You do nothing, Ben commanded. The lawyer was back. The tactical mind was spinning. You do exactly what they expect you to do. You act defeated. You act confused. You are the old man they think you are. Do you understand me? Yes, but why? Because we can't just fight the reverse mortgage. This is bigger. That background check is 5 years old. It's just context. It's not proof of what she's doing now. Right now, it's your word against theirs. A grieving old man versus a caring young couple. They're locking you out of your office. They're taking away your wife's pictures. They're isolating you. I know this playbook. Ben took a deep, audible breath. They're trying to build a legal precedent, Gabe. They're creating a narrative that you're senile, that you're incompetent, that you can't be trusted with your own affairs. So when they finally do forge your signature, or when you have an accident, they'll be the ones in control. They'll be the concerned guardians. He paused, letting the horror of the words sink in. They think you're stupid. We're going to use that. We can't act yet. We need proof, Gabe. We need undeniable proof of their intent. Proof of intent? Ben's voice was a sharp, grating sound in my ear. That's the standard, Gabe. We need them to say what they plan to do. We need them to press on their own. I'm overnighting you a package. It'll get there tomorrow by 10. What package? Amelia checks all the deliveries. Not this one. It'll be addressed to G. Foster Engineering Dept. It'll look like old work supplies. I'm sending you 3 cameras. One is a smoke detector, the others look like USB chargers. You're an engineer, you'll figure it out. I'm also sending you a bump key set for that study door. It's just applied physics, Gabe. You can do this. He was right. I was an engineer. I understood physics. And I understood for the first time that my entire life had become a structural problem. My family was a faulty building, and I needed to find the stress fractures before the whole thing collapsed on top of me. The next morning was agony. I sat in the kitchen pretending to read the newspaper, but my eyes were fixed on the driveway. Every car that passed made my heart leap. Amelia was in the living room on the phone with her spa arguing about an appointment. At 9:45, the white FedEx truck pulled up. I was on my feet before the driver was out of his seat. I'll get it, I called out, trying to sound casual. Amelia's voice was sharp. Just leave it, Gabe. I'll get it when I'm done. No, I said, already moving. It's new supplements for my tremor. The doctor wanted me to try them. I met the driver on the porch, signed for the small, heavy box, and quickly walked it not to the kitchen, but to the garage. I hid it under my workbench, my hands shaking so badly I could barely set it down. The waiting was the worst part. I waited 2 full days. I was the old, defeated man. I stayed in my room. I ate the bland, simple meals they left for me. I nodded when they spoke. I made myself invisible. Then Friday night, Amelia came into the living room dressed in a black dress I didn't recognize. Mark and I are going out, she announced. We have a dinner reservation. Don't wait up. She looked at me in my old armchair. I ordered a pizza for you. It should be here in an hour. Try to keep the box in the kitchen, okay? I just had the carpets cleaned. The condescension, the casual cruelty of it, didn't even sting anymore. It was just fuel. The moment I heard the garage door rumble shut, I was up. The house was mine again, if only for a few hours. My first stop was the package. I tore it open. The cameras were tiny, impossibly small. The bump key set looked complicated, but Ben was right. It was just physics. My hands were shaking. The tremor was back, amplified by adrenaline. I fumbled with the first camera, the smoke detector. I went to the living room. The mantelpiece, now empty and sterile, was the focal point. Directly above it was the old smoke detector. I dragged a chair over my knees, aching as I climbed onto it. My hands were sweating. I couldn't get a grip on the small screws. I dropped one. It bounced on the hearth and rolled under the sofa. "Damn it," I whispered, climbing down. I got on my hands and knees, my old joints screaming. I felt a wave of humiliation. This was my house. I was crawling on the floor, hiding, planting spy cameras, just to prove I had the right to live here. I thought of Mark. I taught him to ride his bike in this very room. We'd pushed the furniture back and he'd wobbled between the sofa and this fireplace, his face a perfect mix of terror and joy. "You got me, Dad. Don't let go." "I got you, son," I whispered to the empty room. "I always got you." But he had let me go. He'd let me fall. I found the screw, climbed back up, and finally got the new detector in place. The tiny invisible lens was aimed perfectly at the mantel and the sofa. Next, the kitchen. This one was easier. The USB charger. I plugged it into the wall outlet right by the island, the one Amelia always used to charge her phone. It was perfect. It had a clear view of the whole kitchen, the back door, and the breakfast nook where they'd ambushed me. Last was the study. The locked door. My sanctuary. I took out the tools Ben had sent. My hands were slick with sweat. This was the hardest part. The sound. The noise of metal on metal. I slid the tension wrench into the lock. I inserted the bump key. I held my breath. I remembered the video Ben had texted to the burner phone. Apply steady tension. A sharp, firm tap. Not too hard. I tapped the key. Clack. It was deafening in the silent house. My heart hammered against my ribs. What if they came back? What if they forgot something? I tapped it again. Clack. Nothing. I was doing it wrong. I, an engineer who had designed structural joints for 40-ton bridges, couldn't defeat a simple deadbolt. "Come on, Gabe," I muttered. Physics. I took a deep breath. I reset the wrench. I inserted the key. I applied the tension and tap. The click of the tumblers falling into place was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The knob turned in my hand. The door swung open. It was cold inside, and it stank of Amelia's floral perfume. She had taken it over completely. My desk was covered in her bills, fashion magazines, a new laptop. My blueprints, my awards, my engineering books. They were gone. I looked in the closet. They were shoved into the back in 2 unlabeled cardboard boxes, thrown away just like Sarah's pictures. I saw the outlet under the desk near the floor. I plugged in the second USB charger, the lens aimed right at the desk chair. I didn't stay. I couldn't. I locked the door from the outside, pulled it shut, and tested the knob. It was secure. I had left no trace. I retreated to my little room, the baseball pennants mocking me on the walls. I grabbed the burner phone from my pocket. Ben had already configured it. I opened the simple hidden app he'd installed. I tapped the screen. The feed from the kitchen camera flickered to life. I saw the empty island, the spice rack Amelia hated. I tapped again. The living room. The empty mantel. The chair I was just climbing on. I tapped a third time. The study. The view from under the desk aimed at the empty leather chair where my son and his wife would sit and plot my destruction. I could see them. I could hear them. The trap was set. The rage had cooled, replaced by a cold, hard patience. They thought I was the old clueless man. They thought I was the prey. They had no idea I had just become the hunter. I spent the next 2 nights huddled in that narrow room. I locked the thin, hollow door, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I told them I was feeling ill, that I must have caught a bug. I didn't want to be a bother. "Oh, that's fine." Amelia's voice came through the door, sounding almost cheerful. "You just rest, Gabe. We'll leave a tray for you outside." They were relieved. They were happy to have me out of the way. It gave me time. I sat in the dark, my back pressed against the wall, the burner phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. My eyes were glued to the tiny, grainy screen. I watched them. I watched them move through my house with a casual ownership that made my skin crawl. I watched Amelia make her green kale smoothies in Sarah's blender. I watched Mark come home from work, kiss his wife, and complain about his boss. I watched them sit on my sofa, in the exact spot where Sarah and I had planned our louse, and scroll through their phones, laughing at videos. They were so normal, so casual. My God, were they really the monsters Ben described? Or was I the one going crazy? Was I the paranoid old man they were already claiming I was? I was starting to doubt my own sanity. Then late on the second night it happened. It was almost midnight. I was watching the kitchen feed, my eyes burning with exhaustion, the empty chairs casting long shadows in the moonlight. I was about to give up to try and get an hour of sleep. The back door opened. Amelia walked in. She was still fully dressed in the black pants and expensive sweater she'd worn out to dinner. She didn't turn on the main light, just the small one above the stove. She looked agitated. Her phone was pressed hard against her ear. I sat up straight in the bed, my heart instantly pounding. I fumbled for my headphones and plugged them into the burner phone, turning the volume all the way up. The microphone on the camera was weak, but if I strained, I could hear her. She was pacing, back and forth, from the stove to the refrigerator, back and forth. A predator in her cage. "No," she said. Her voice was a low, angry hiss. "He didn't sign." She stopped listening, running her free hand through her dark hair. I watched her perfectly manicured nails scrape against her scalp. "I know," she snapped into the phone. "I told you he was just a stubborn old fool. He said no, just like that, like he actually had a choice." She listened again, her body wound so tight, she looked like a spring. "No, no, we have to move to Plan B." My stomach clenched. Plan A was the reverse mortgage. Dear God, what was Plan B? "Yes," she said, her voice dropping. "I know the 80,000 is due. You don't have to remind me. I know what happens if we're late. I'm not stupid." 80,000. The debt. The reason for this entire nightmare. Amelia walked closer to the island, right toward the camera, right toward the USB charger I had planted. Her face filled my screen. It was pale, and her eyes were hard like chips of glass. "No, I am handling it," she spat. "You just need to be patient. Mark is useless. He's weak. He'll do whatever I say. I just need time. I'll get him to sign." She listened again, and then she laughed. It was the same cold, ugly, dismissive laugh I'd heard in the study. "Oh, I'll get him to sign," she said. She turned, looking away from the camera toward the hallway, toward the stairs, toward my room. "Look," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, but I heard every chilling word. "He's 70 years old. He's already unsteady on his feet. He's got that tremor. Old people, they fall. They fall downstairs all the time. It's tragic. It's common." I stopped breathing. The phone in my hand went slick with sweat. My blood didn't run cold. It felt like it had turned to fire. "It just has to look right," she continued. Her voice was calm, logical, as if she were planning a kitchen renovation, and not this. "It just has to look like an accident. Once he's gone, once he's incapacitated, I'm the next of kin along with Mark. We'll have power of attorney. We won't need his signature." I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the thin blanket. I didn't care. I scrambled to the side of the bed, my stomach heaving. I gagged, stifling the sound against my fist, my body shaking. Incapacitated. An accident. Ben was right. Husband number one fell down a flight of stairs. She wasn't just planning to rob me. She was planning to kill me. She was going to push me down the stairs. The beautiful oak staircase I had designed and built with my own two hands. The staircase Sarah had polished every Saturday morning. This wasn't about a debt anymore. This wasn't about a house. This was about my life. I picked up the phone, my hand shaking so violently I could barely see the screen. Amelia was still there, still talking, sealing my fate. "I don't care what you have to do," she was saying. "Just be ready. When I call you, you come, and we finish this. Yes, I'll handle the old man. You just handle the mess." She hung up. She stood in the dark kitchen for a long, terrible moment, just staring into the shadows. Then she turned off the light. My screen went black. I sat in the darkness, rigid with a terror so profound it was almost paralyzing. Husband number 1 stares. Husband number 2 food poisoning. And I was next. My mind raced, trying to grasp the one thing that mattered. Who was she talking to? Who was the you she was coordinating with? Who was coming to handle the mess? This wasn't just her and Mark anymore. There was someone else, and they were coming for me. My hands were shaking so hard, the little screen blurred in front of my eyes. Who was she talking to? When I call you, you come. You handle the mess. It wasn't just her. It was a conspiracy. Ben was right. This was a professional job. They were going to kill me for my house. My mind was spinning a vortex of pure, uncut terror. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. Then I heard another sound, not from the phone, but from the house itself. The faint, unmistakable click of a deadbolt being unlocked. I fumbled with the burner phone, my thumb slipping on the smooth buttons. I had to switch the feed. My screen went black for a second, then flickered to life with a new low-angle view. The study. My study. The door was open. They were inside. Amelia was sitting in my leather desk chair, the one Sarah had given me when I first made partner. Mark was standing beside her, leaning over the desk, his back to the camera. They were illuminated by the harsh white light of the desk lamp I used to read blueprints. "I don't know, Amelia," Mark was saying, his voice tight with nerves. I don't like this." "You don't have to like it. You just have to be quiet," she snapped. "I'm trying to concentrate." What were they doing? I watched as Mark shifted, revealing what was on the desk. Amelia had a pen in her hand, a fine-tipped black pen. In front of her was a sheet of paper. No, not just a paper. It was one of my old engineering documents. One of the blueprints I had kept, the ones she'd filed away in a box. And next to it was a fresh white document. She was looking at the blueprint, then at the new paper, moving her hand in a slow, careful loop. I realized what I was seeing. She was practicing my signature. "Amelia, stop. Please," Mark begged. He was pale, sweating under the desk lamp. This is forgery. It's fraud, Amelia. We'll go to jail if they find out." I stared at the screen, my heart turning to lead. It was my signature. Not just my name, my signature. The one I had spent 42 years to perfecting. The specific, flowing Gabe Foster, with the long structural loop on the F that I put on every drawing, every contract, every approval. It was my mark of integrity. It was my word in ink, and she was tracing it, stealing it. "Quiet, Mark," she said, her tongue sticking out in concentration. "I'm trying to get the loop right on the F. He's got such an arrogant flourish, doesn't he?" "I'm serious." Mark's voice cracked. "That reverse mortgage thing was one thing. We were asking him, but this is a federal crime. We can't just forge his name on financial documents." Amelia finally slammed the pen down. The sound made me jump. She leaned back in my chair, tilting her head to look up at her husband, and her eyes were filled with a contempt so pure it was terrifying. "Listen to me, you weak, sniveling idiot," she said, her voice dropping to that same icy hiss from the kitchen. "You have two choices right now. Do you want to go to jail for a little bit of fraud? Or do you want to go to the hospital? Because those loan sharks from Reno broke both your legs." "Reno." The word hit me. Ben's words echoing from the garage. "Reno, Nevada. Husband number one. Husband number two. Mark flinched as if she'd slapped him. They wouldn't. I told them I just needed more time. They don't do time, Mark, Amelia shouted, standing up so fast her chair screeched on the floor. That $80,000 gambling debt you racked up. That's not my problem. It's our problem. Because they know where I live. They know where he lives. So you have a choice. We get this money, or we face them with empty hands. And I am not doing that. My God. Gambling. It wasn't a failed investment. It wasn't a bad business deal. It was a gambling debt. My son, the boy I'd given everything to, had gambled away $80,000. Money he didn't have. And he had brought this vulture into my home to fix it. I'm not going down for your stupidity, Mark. Amelia continued, her voice lower now, more menacing. I'm not losing this house, this life, because you couldn't keep your hands off a poker table. She picked the pen back up. She shoved another blank paper in front of him. Now, shut your mouth, stop your whining, and hold the damn paper still so I can finish this. Mark just stood there, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and defeated. He looked at her. He looked at the paper. And then, he did it. He put both his hands on the top corners of the paper, holding it steady for her. I watched. I just watched, my chest hollow. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't just weak. He wasn't being led. He was a participant. He was holding the paper steady while she practiced stealing my name. He was an accomplice. He was in that single silent moment no longer my son. The betrayal was no longer just a fear. It was a fact. It was happening right in front of my eyes. It was absolute. It was complete. I watched them. I watched my son hold the paper steady as that woman, that viper, meticulously practiced stealing my name, stealing my life. I clicked off the screen. The burner phone felt heavy hot, like a small dense brick of poison in my hand. I couldn't stay in the bedroom. I needed air. I needed Ben. I crept down the stairs, each step a potential betrayal, every shadow a threat. I didn't stop until I was back in the garage, hidden, my back pressed against the cold concrete wall, the smell of oil and old dust filling my lungs. My hand was shaking again. Not the tremor. This was rage. A deep seismic rage that vibrated from my core. I hit the number 2 on the keypad. Ben answered on the first ring as if he had been sitting by the phone waiting. What? He's in on it. My voice was a dry, cracking sound. I hardly recognized it as my own. Ben. He's helping her. What are you talking about, Gabe? What did you see? Did she hurt you? No. Worse. I relayed what I had just seen. The locked study, the blueprints, the fresh paper. She's practicing my signature, Ben, my engineering signature, the loop on the F. And Mark. I had to stop to force the words out. He's holding the paper for her. He's holding it steady. I told him everything I had heard. The forgery. The $80,000 gambling debt. Reno. The loan sharks. The weakness. The complicity. The words just fell out of me, a stream of poison I had been holding in. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. When Ben finally spoke, his voice was pure ice. That's it. Ben, No, that is it, Gabe. We are done playing defense. That is conspiracy to commit felony fraud. That is wire fraud. That is elder exploitation. And it is happening on top of the accident she is already planning. That is enough. What do you mean? I asked, though I already knew. I mean, you hang up this phone. Ben roared, the sudden volume making me flinch. You hang up this phone, you walk back into that house, and you call 911 right now. I can't. Ben, I can't. Call the police, Gabe. Are you a fool? Did you not hear what you just told me? Did you not hear what I told you? She is not just a gold digger. She has a history. She is planning your murder, and your son, your precious weak-willed son, is her accomplice. We turn over the video feeds, we turn over the audio, we get them both arrested tonight. It's over." "No." The word ripped out of my throat, raw and desperate. "No, not the police, not yet." "Why the hell not?" he yelled. "Are you insane? She is going to kill you, and he is going to let her." "Because he is my son," I shouted back, the word echoing in the small, cluttered garage. It came out as a sob. "He's my son, Ben. He's weak. He's not evil. He can't be. He's just scared." "Gabe, weakness is evil when it holds the paper for the killer," Ben said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "He made his choice. He looked at that forgery and he held the paper. He's not your boy anymore. He's her partner." "No, I have to give him a chance," I insisted, my mind racing, scrambling for a foothold. I have to see it for myself with my own eyes. I have to give him one last chance to choose me, to choose his father." I sank down onto the drywall bucket, my head in my hands. I could see Mark so clearly. Not the pale, defeated man in the study. I saw Mark at 10 years old, striking out at his first Little League game, his face crumpling in tears as he ran to the dugout looking for me, only me. He was always so desperate for approval. He was always so terrified of failure, of not being good enough. He's not a monster. He's just lost. He's trapped. She trapped him with this debt, with these sharks from Reno. He's scared. I had to believe that. If I didn't believe that, then 42 years of my life had been a lie. Then everything was gone. "Gabe, you're a fool," Ben said, his voice flat with resignation. "He's going to let her put you in the ground." "No!" I said, my head snapping up. A new thought, cold and hard and clear, was forming in the chaos. "He's not. Because we're not going to wait for them to act. We are not going to wait for the accident. We're going to force their hand." "What are you talking about?" "My birthday," I said, the plan suddenly materializing whole and complete. "My 70th birthday is this Saturday. Gabe, this is not the time to be planning a damn party." "It's the perfect time," I said, my voice hardening. I was an engineer again. I was designing a structure, a trap. They're getting desperate. They failed with the reverse mortgage. The forgery is clearly taking too long. They're going to move to plan B, the accident, very soon. "So what's the plan, Gabe? You're going to wear a helmet to your own party?" "No," I said, standing up. "I'm going to give them exactly what they think they want. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to tell them I've had a change of heart. I'm going to tell them I'm finally ready to sign the papers. I'm going to give my son one last public chance to stop it, or to help them push the pen." I hung up the burner phone, the plastic clicking shut. The absolute silence of the garage pressed in on me. Ben was right about everything. He called me a fool. But I was a fool with a plan. I stayed out there for an hour, just breathing in the cold smell of oil and old tires, letting the rage settle, letting it cool and harden into something dense and heavy. Resolve. I didn't go back into the house until I heard Mark's car pull in much later that night. I heard them moving around, their voices low and muffled. I stayed in my room, the thin door locked. The next morning I took my time. I didn't shave. I looked at my face in the small bathroom mirror. My eyes were red. My skin looked gray. I put on my oldest pair of slippers, the ones where the sole was coming loose, and my gray, worn-out bathrobe. I practiced letting my shoulders slump. I practiced letting my hands shake. I looked finally exactly like the man they thought I was. Defeated. Confused. Old. I shuffled down the hall, making sure my feet dragged on the carpet. I found them in the kitchen, exactly where they had ambushed me the day before. They were sitting at the island, heads bent together, whispering over a laptop. The minute they saw me, they fell silent. Amelia looked up, her face a mask of annoyed impatience. Mark looked away. They were vultures waiting for me to die, and they were angry that it was taking so long. I leaned heavily on the granite countertop, as if the walk from my room had taken everything out of me. "You were right," I said. My voice was a dry, weak croak. Amelia's head snapped up. Her eyes narrowed, searching my face for a trick. "What did you just say, Gabe?" I slumped onto the stool, the one I used to sit on with Sarah while she cooked. I ran a shaky hand over my unshaven face. I said, "You were right. Both of you." I looked at Mark, trying to pour every last ounce of surrender I could find into my voice. I'm just an old man, and I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting you." I watched them. This was the moment. Would they take the bait? I saw it. It was tiny, almost invisible, a look that passed between them. It wasn't just relief. It was triumph. Mark's shoulders, which had been tense and high, visibly relaxed. He let out a long breath he hadn't seemed to know he was holding. Amelia, the true predator, was better. Her entire posture softened. The hard, calculating eyes melted into a warm, sympathetic gaze. The actress was back. She slid off her stool and came around the island, placing a hand on my arm. Her touch felt like ice. "Oh, Gabe," she cooed, her voice suddenly dripping with a syrupy false concern. "I knew you'd understand. We knew you'd come around." She stroked my arm as if patting a dog. "We just want what's best for you. We just want to take care of you. You shouldn't have to worry about all this financial stress. That's our burden now." "I know," I muttered, letting my head hang. This house, Sarah, it's hard, it's just hard to let go." "Of course it is," she said, her voice like velvet. "But you're not letting go, you're letting us help. You're letting your family take the weight off your shoulders." "Yes," I said. "Yes, I want to do it. The papers, the reverse mortgage. I'll sign it." "That's wonderful, Dad," Mark said, his voice bright with the sound of $80,000 of gambling debt vanishing into thin air. "That's great. We can call the bank on Monday. They can send a notary right over." "No," I said, holding up a trembling hand. They both froze. The air in the kitchen snapped tight again. "No." Amelia's voice was sharp, the velvet gone. "No," I repeated, trying to sound frail and confused. I don't want to just sign it away. Not like that. Not in some back room with a stranger. This is my legacy. This is Sarah's house. It's a big deal. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it properly." "What does properly mean, Dad?" Mark asked, his impatience leaking through. "My birthday," I said. "My 70th. It's this Saturday. The family is coming. Your aunt, your cousins. Ben is flying in." I looked at them, my eyes watery, pleading. "I want to do it then, in front of everyone." Amelia's eyes narrowed. The victorious smile faltered, replaced by a flash of cold, reptilian suspicion. The shark sensed something was wrong with the bait. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was flat. "Why in front of everyone? That's odd, Gabe. It's a private financial matter." I had to sell this. This was the most important performance of my life. I looked down at my shaking hands. I let a long, shuddering breath out. "Because," I said, my voice cracking, "because I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I've been difficult. I've been selfish, just like you said. And I want the family to see. I want them to see that I'm finally doing the right thing, that I'm handing over the reins to you." I looked up, focusing on Mark. I want to make an announcement, a little speech to celebrate the future of the family, to celebrate you, Mark, taking over. I want it to be official." I let a single weak tear track down my rough cheek. I want them to see that I'm not a stubborn old fool. I want them to see that I trust my son. I watched Amelia. I could see the gears turning in her head. She was weighing the risk of a public scene against the reward of a public coronation, a public surrender. In front of witnesses, it would be ironclad. They could tell everyone, "See, he wanted this. He's so happy." It would erase any suspicion, any doubt. She looked at Mark. His face was lit up. He loved the idea of a public validation of his father, finally officially anointing him. Amelia's calculating expression dissolved. She smiled. And this time, it was a real smile. A smile of pure, absolute, predatory triumph. She had won. "A speech," she said, savoring the word. "An announcement. Gabe, that is the most wonderful idea you've ever had." The house was loud, louder than it had been in 2 years. I could hear the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway, the chime of the doorbell, and Amelia's high, false laugh echoing from the entryway. The party had begun. My 70th birthday. My public execution. I was in the living room, supposedly helping with the final setup. My role, as directed by Ben, was simple. Be old, be frail, be confused. "Gabe, we're still short 2 chairs," Amelia called out, her voice bright and syrupy for the arriving guests. "Could you be a dear and grab them from the dining room, the ones by the wall?" I nodded weakly, my shoulders slumped. "Of course, dear. Whatever you need." I shuffled into the dining room. I gripped the back of the first heavy oak chair. I made sure to exaggerate the effort, letting my tremor, the one I usually fought to control, take over my hands. I let my breathing become shallow and wheezy. I dragged the chair, scraping its legs loudly across the hardwood floor. She was watching me. I didn't have to look. I could feel her eyes on my back, cold and assessing. Amelia was watching me like a hawk, studying me, making sure her prey was truly wounded before she moved in for the final strike. The doorbell rang again. "I've got it!" Mark shouted from the hall. His voice was too loud, too cheerful. He was overacting. A bad actor in his wife's terrible play. I heard the door open, and then a chorus of surprised voices. "Mark, my boy!" I froze. That booming, unmistakable growl. "Ben. Uncle Ben." Mark sounded stunned. "And Aunt Martha. Uncle Joe. We weren't expecting you." "Nonsense." Ben's voice cut through the chatter. "It's my big brother's 70th. You think we'd miss that? We just flew in this morning." "Surprise?" I shuffled back to the dining room to get the second chair. Ben. He'd done it. Aunt Martha was Sarah's younger sister, sharp as a tack and fiercely protective of her memory. Uncle Joe was my oldest friend from the firm, a man who had seen me build my life from nothing. They weren't just guests. They were witnesses. Ben had secretly expanded the guest list, filling the room with the only people in the world whose opinions Mark and Amelia actually cared about. People they wanted to impress. People they couldn't easily dismiss. It was brilliant. The stage was set, and now the audience was arriving. I dragged the second chair out, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I paused, leaning on the chair's back, and took a few staged, shaky breaths. My eyes fell on the empty corner by the window. That was where Sarah's armchair used to be. The worn, comfortable floral one she loved. Amelia had moved it to the basement 2 months ago, claiming it clashed with the new rug she had bought with my money. I stared at that empty space. It felt like a physical hole in the room, a gap where her warmth and her reason should have been. "I'm doing this for you, Sarah." The words were a silent promise. They're not just taking a house. They are trying to erase you. They are trying to steal the legacy we built together. And I will not let them. Not while I still have breath. This performance, this agonizing weight, this shame of pretending to be weak. It was all for her. To protect the foundation of what we built. "Gabe, are you all right?" Amelia was suddenly at my side, her hand landing on my arm. Her touch was possessive, proprietary. She was the caring daughter-in-law playing her part for the newly arrived witnesses. "You look so pale," she said, her voice dripping with that sickly sweet public concern. "You've done enough, really. Why don't you go sit down? Mark can get the rest." I'm fine, dear," I wheezed, patting her hand. Just, just need a moment. Getting these chairs. It takes a lot out of me these days. I'm not what I used to be." She smiled, a quick, satisfied flash. My weakness was exactly what she wanted to see. It confirmed her narrative. The poor, confused old man. We have to take care of him. He doesn't even know what's good for him. The room was filling up now. About 15 people. Ben was holding court by the fireplace, telling a story, his laughter booming. Aunt Martha was looking around the living room. Her eyes narrowed, clearly noticing the absence of Sarah's photos on the mantel. I watched Mark. He was a wreck, nervously pouring drinks, splashing wine on the counter. He kept glancing at Amelia, then at me, then at the relatives. He was a man walking a tightrope. The moment was getting close. My speech. The official surrender. I saw Amelia catch Mark's eye from across the room. She gave a sharp, subtle tilt of her head. It was a command. "Go." Mark nodded, his face pale and slick with sweat. He put down the wine bottle and slipped out of the room, down the hall toward the study. My study. I waited. I counted to 30. I needed to see. I pushed myself up from the chair. "Bathroom," I mumbled to Uncle Joe, shuffling toward the hallway. I didn't turn toward the bathroom. I stopped in the shadows of the hall, just peeking around the corner. They were standing just inside the study, the door cracked open. Amelia had followed him. She was holding a thick, blue-bordered folder. The reverse mortgage application. The death warrant for my home. "Do you have the pen?" she whispered, her voice a venomous hiss, all traces of the smiling hostess gone. Yes, right here," Mark said, patting his jacket pocket. He looked sick. "Good." She pushed the folder into his hands, gripping his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. "Keep this with you. Do not let it out of your sight. This is it, Mark. This is the whole play." "Amelia, I don't know," he whispered, his eyes darting toward the living room. "In front of everyone, Aunt Martha is here. Ben is here. It feels wrong." "It feels final," she corrected him, her voice like steel. "It's perfect. He announces it, he signs, everyone claps. It's a celebration. No one, not even that old fox Ben, can ever question it. No one can ever say we forced him. It will be his gift to us." She straightened his tie, her fingers moving like spider legs on his chest. "Be ready, Mark Cho," she commanded. "As soon as that old fool finishes his speech, you get that pen in his hand. Do you understand me? We finish this. Today." Mark just nodded, a silent, obedient puppet. He tucked the folder under his arm, his face a mask of terror and greed. He turned, ready to walk back out and celebrate his father's final public surrender. The living room was hot. Too many bodies. Too many voices bouncing off the high ceilings. My 70th birthday party. I sat in my old leather armchair, the one Sarah always said was molded to my back. Now it just felt big and empty. I watched the scene. 20 people, maybe more. My whole life, or what was left of it, gathered in this room. They were laughing. They were drinking wine. They thought this was a celebration. I felt cold. The room was full, but I had never felt so alone. Across the room, I saw her, Amelia. She was radiant. She was the perfect hostess, wearing an expensive cream-colored dress, her laughter bright and hard as glass. She looked like she already owned the place. And next to her, my son, Mark. He had a fixed, brittle smile plastered on his face. He was a prince in a suit, but I knew he was just a puppet. I saw his hand held just slightly behind his back. He was holding it. The blue folder. The reverse mortgage application. My death warrant. He kept tapping his fingers on it. A nervous, rapid thump, thump, thump. They were ready. They thought this was their moment of victory. Amelia caught my eye. She smiled at me, a wide, dazzling, false smile. She lifted her wine glass and tapped it with a perfectly manicured fingernail. Ting, ting, ting. The chatter in the room slowly died down. Every face turned toward her. Every face turned toward me. "Everyone," she said. Her voice projected, filled with that theatrical warmth that made my stomach clench. "Thank you all so much for coming, for being here to celebrate our Gabe, his 70th. It's just such a wonderful milestone." She beamed at me, the loving, devoted daughter-in-law. "And Gabe, I think he has a few words he'd like to say." "Right, Gabe. This was it. The performance. My performance." I pushed myself up from the armchair. I made sure the movement was slow. I let my knees ache. I let my hand, the one with the tremor, visibly shake as I gripped the armrest for support. I saw Aunt Martha, Sarah's sister, look at me with a flash of real concern. Good. The act was working. "Thank you," I started. My voice was quiet. I cleared my throat, making it sound reedy and old. "Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to see so many faces." I looked around the room. I met Ben's eyes in the corner. My brother. He wasn't smiling. He was watching me. His gaze was like steel. He knew that this was the script. 70, I said, shuffling to the center of the room. It's a big number. It makes you think. It makes you think about the future, about legacy. I turned my gaze right onto Mark and Amelia. They were standing side by side, beaming like the cover of a magazine. The perfect, caring couple. "As you all know," I continued, my voice wavering just a little, and this time it wasn't all acting. "The last 2 years, they've been hard. Since she left." I had to pause. The pain was still real. It was the only real thing I had left. And it was my armor now. "Since Sarah passed, I haven't been myself. I've been a burden." "Nonsense, Gabe," Uncle Joe called out from the back. No, it's true," I said, waving him off. I let my hand tremble in the air. "I know it is, but I've been lucky, so lucky, because I have Mark and I have Amelia." I turned to them. I tried to make my eyes look watery and grateful. "They've been so wonderful. They moved in. They've been taking care of me." Amelia's smile, if possible, got wider. She reached over and squeezed Mark's arm, pulling him closer. "And they've been so worried," I said. "Worried about me, all alone in this big house. Worried about my finances. Worried about how I'm managing everything. They have been so concerned about my well-being." Mark nodded, his face a perfect mask of serious, dutiful concern. What a good son, what a loyal, caring boy I had raised. "They've been helping me," I said, my voice dropping. "Helping me review my assets. This big house, it's a lot for one old man to handle. It's a lot of value, just sitting here, wasted." The room was completely silent now. You could hear the ice clinking in someone's glass. I took a deep, shaky breath. "And after many, many long talks with them, they've helped me come to a very important decision." I saw them. I saw Mark and Amelia. They both leaned forward. It was involuntary, eager. Amelia's eyes were shining, bright, hard, and greedy. Mark was already shifting the blue folder in his hand, moving it from behind his back. I saw his other hand slip into his jacket pocket. I knew he was touching the pen. They were ready. They were vibrating with the wind. They helped me realize that, well, that it's time to make a change. So, I've made a decision. A decision about my will. A decision about the future of this house. They were smiling. They were so ready for their gift, so ready for their victory. I took one more shaky breath. I looked at Mark. I looked at Amelia. I made sure they could see the surrender, the final pathetic giving in. I've been so selfish, I said, my voice thick and wavering. But today, on my 70th birthday, I'm finally doing the right thing. Mark's smile was so wide it looked like it hurt his face. He was already pulling the blue folder out from under his arm, holding it ready by his side. Amelia was practically vibrating. I swear she was almost bouncing on her toes, her eyes fixed on me, bright and hungry, like a coyote watching a wounded rabbit. So, I said, raising my voice just a little, letting it crack with emotion. I've made my decision. I want you all to be my witnesses. I have decided to sign over this house and my entire estate. Amelia let out a tiny, high-pitched gasp of victory. Mark took one step forward, his hand extending the folder. To the Sarah Foster Cancer Fund. The words just hung there. For one long, perfect, terrible second, nothing happened. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking glasses. It all just stopped. It was as if I had thrown a switch and cut the sound to the entire world. I watched Mark's face. The bright, eager, greedy smile didn't just fade. It broke. It shattered and fell away, leaving behind a gray, slack-jawed mask of utter confusion. The blue folder slipped from his numb fingers, hitting the thick carpet with a soft, dull thud. But Amelia, oh, Amelia. Her face was a work of art. I watched the blood drain from it, as if a plug had been pulled at her feet. She went from a victorious rosy glow to a waxy, chalky white. And then, as the meaning of my words slammed into her, as the $80,000 in debt and the loan sharks from Reno flooded her mind, the white was replaced by a dark, mottled purple, a deep, blotchy, ugly rage. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was Aunt Martha, Sarah's sister, who broke the silence. Gabe, a cancer fund in Sarah's name. Her voice was thick with tears. Oh, Gabe, that's the most beautiful thing you could have done. Amelia finally found her voice. It was not the sweet cooing sound of the hostess. It was a low, guttural growl that barely sounded human. What did you say? I turned to her. My hand wasn't shaking anymore. My voice wasn't weak. I stood up straight, letting the full height I hadn't used in 2 years return to me. I felt the engineer's authority, the authority of the man who built this room, settle back onto my shoulders like an old familiar coat. I spoke clearly, my voice ringing out in the silent room, that my entire estate is going to a charity in my wife's name. This house will be sold, and the money will be used to help women like Sarah, people who actually need it. You can't, Mark stammered. He was looking at the folder on the floor, then at his wife's terrifying face. But the papers, the mortgage, we talked. You said, oh, those papers, I said, turning my attention to him. My son. The reverse mortgage application, the papers you were going to have me sign, the ones your wife practiced forging my signature on last night. The room let out a collective gasp. I saw Ben in the corner just smile. I am not signing your papers, I said, my voice dropping cold and hard as the granite in the kitchen. Not today. Not ever. The bank account you were trying to pay off. The $80,000 gambling debt from Reno. You're on your own, son. Mark looked like I had physically struck him. He staggered back a step. How did you... But Amelia wasn't confused anymore. She wasn't stunned. She was a cornered animal. She looked at me, and all the masks were gone. The caring daughter-in-law, the concerned wife, the modern hostess, all gone. All that was left was the predator Ben had warned me about. Her eyes narrowed into thin, black, venomous slits. "You," she hissed. "You old bastard. You've been watching us." She said it, hissed it really, and the entire room froze again. All the guests, Aunt Martha, Uncle Joe, they just stared, their faces a mix of confusion and horror. They didn't understand. They didn't know what she was talking about. But Mark knew, and I knew. "Watching you," I said, taking a small, deliberate step toward her. I was no longer the frail old man. I was the man who had just taken back control of his life. "Yes, Amelia, I have been. I know all about the cameras. The ones in the kitchen. The one in my study." I saw Mark's hand fly to his mouth. He looked like he was going to be sick right there on the new carpet. "And I know all about your late-night phone calls," I continued, my voice cold and even cutting through the silence of the room. "In fact, I've been wondering, should I talk to the police about your Plan B, the one you're coordinating with your friend from Reno? The one about my accident." I looked at her right in her cold, dead eyes. "The one about the stairs." That was the word. That was the trigger. It wasn't a slow burn. It was an explosion. The last shred of her caring daughter-in-law mask didn't just slip. She ripped it off and set it on fire. "You!" she shrieked. It was not a human sound. It was a raw, guttural scream of pure, cornered animal rage. "You old bastard! You were spying on me!" She moved. She was faster than I could have imagined. She launched herself across the small space between us, her face twisted into a grotesque mask of hatred, her arm raised. I saw it coming, but I was too old, too slow, too stunned to move. Her hand, the one with the gaudy diamond ring I had paid for as a welcome to the family gift, cracked across my face. Crack. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet room. It wasn't a slap. It was a punch. A full-force blow. Her ring, the diamond, caught the side of my eye and my temple. The pain was electric. A blinding white-hot flash. It felt like my skull had split open. I staggered backward. The world tilted. I wasn't just unsteady. I was falling. I crashed sideways into the heavy oak chair I had dragged into the room earlier. The chair toppled over and I went down with it, a 70-year-old man collapsing in a heap of tangled limbs and splintered dignity right in the center of my own living room. The room erupted. I heard Aunt Martha scream. I heard Uncle Joe shout, "My God, Amelia, what have you done?" I was on the floor on my hands and knees. The side of my face was on fire. My eye was already swelling shut, hot, wet tears of pure, agonizing pain streaming from it. I could taste the metallic tang of blood in my mouth from where I'd bitten my tongue. I tried to push myself up, my hand slipping on the polished hardwood. But the physical pain, it was nothing. It was a dull, distant throb compared to what happened next. I looked up through my one good eye, searching. My son, Mark. I looked for my son. He was standing there, frozen, his face as white as a sheet. He was staring at me on the floor, bleeding. He was staring at his wife, who was breathing heavily, her chest heaving, her hand still raised like a claw. "Mark," I gasped, reaching a hand out. "Mark, she hit me." This was it. The final choice. The ultimate test. His wife had just physically assaulted his father. He had to see. He had to see the monster he had aligned himself with. This was the moment he would wake up. This was the moment he would run to me. The moment he would finally choose his family. The room was in chaos. Ben was moving, his face a mask of thunder. Aunt Martha was crying. But I only watched Mark. He looked at me down on the floor. He looked at Amelia, breathing like an animal. And then slowly, deliberately, He moved. He took one step, then another. He walked right past me. He went to his wife. He stepped in front of her, shielding her with his own body, facing me, facing the room. "See?" he shouted, his voice cracking with a strange, hysterical new strength. "See what you did, Dad? You pushed her until she snapped." I just knelt there, my hand over my bleeding eye, the world blurry and red. I stared up at my boy, my son. "Mark," I whispered again, the word a plea. "Mark, she just hit your father." He looked down at me, and his face, which had been pale and weak, hardened. He looked at Amelia and then back at me, and I saw something new in his eyes, something I had never seen before. Pride. He stood up taller. He puffed out his chest the same way he had when he was a boy, trying to look tough. He raised his voice not in a stammer, but in a proud, clear, ringing announcement. "That's my wife," he declared to the entire horrified room. She put him in his place. She finally taught him to shut up. She taught him what respect looks like. My heart didn't just break. It stopped. It turned to dust. The room fell silent again, a new, more profound silence of absolute shock. And then from the front door, a new sound. Clap. A single, slow, deliberate clap. Clap. It cut through the silence like a judge's gavel. Clap. Every head turned. All sound had vanished from the room, replaced by that one impossible noise. Clap. A slow, rhythmic, insulting sound that cut through the chaos like a surgeon's scalpel. Clap. Every head turned, mine included. I looked up from the floor, my hand pressed to my eye, the blood warm and sticky between my fingers. Standing in the grand archway of the living room, silhouetted against the bright light of the foyer, was Ben. My brother Ben. He wasn't in his usual golf shirt or retirement khakis. He was wearing his armor. A dark, perfectly tailored charcoal suit, a crisp white shirt, and a severe blood-red tie. He looked like he was about to walk into a hostile takeover negotiation, not a 70th birthday party. And he was not alone. Flanking him, standing just slightly behind, were two uniformed police officers. Their faces were impassive, their hands resting calmly on their belts. They weren't just here for show. They were on duty. The room, which had been frozen in horror at my assault, was now frozen in a new, deeper, more confusing terror. Ben's eyes scanned the scene. He took it all in. Me on the floor bleeding, Amelia panting, her face still a mask of rage, and Mark, his son, standing proudly over his wife, shielding the woman who had just struck his father. Ben just smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a fox who had just watched every chicken in the county lock itself in the henhouse. "Happy birthday, brother," he said, his voice booming into the silence. He stepped into the room. The officers followed their presence, sucking all the air out. They didn't move to help me. They didn't move to arrest anyone. They just stood there, arms crossed, watching, waiting. Ben walked past Aunt Martha, who was sobbing into her hands. He walked past Uncle Joe, who looked like he'd seen a ghost. He walked right past me, still kneeling on the floor. He didn't even look down. He walked until he was standing directly in front of my son, directly in front of Mark. He stopped barely an inch from Mark's chest. Mark, who was taller than him, visibly shrank. The pride, the false strength, it all just evaporated. He was a terrified 12-year-old boy again. Ben just looked at him for a long, terrible second. Then he looked at Amelia, who was hiding behind Mark, her eyes wide with a new dawning panic. "That was quite a speech, nephew," Ben said, his voice soft, conversational, and absolutely lethal. "A real declaration. She taught him what respect looks like. She put him in his place so he'd finally shut up." Ben smiled again, that terrible, sharp-toothed smile. "I have to hand it to you, Mark. That is the first time in my 40-year legal career that I have ever heard a man or proudly so publicly admit to conspiracy to commit aggravated assault." Mark's face went completely blank. What? What are you talking about? Conspiracy, Ben said, as if explaining it to a child. When your wife assaulted my client, he gestured vaguely at me on the floor, and you stepped in to shield her. When you announced to a room full of witnesses, he gestured to Aunt Martha and Uncle Joe, that you supported her actions. You made yourself her accomplice. Legally. That's what conspiracy means. Ben leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that everyone in the room could hear. And you did it, he said, tapping Mark on the chest with one finger. You did it all, in front of 3 active recording high-definition cameras. Amelia let out a small strangled sound. Mark's face, which had been pale with confusion, suddenly turned the color of ash. His eyes darted around the room, finally noticing the new clean smoke detector above the empty mantel. His gaze flew to the kitchen, to the small black USB charger plugged into the wall. Bumo, the island. The trap. He finally saw the trap. I was still on the floor. The pain from the blow was a dull, heavy throb, but it was nothing compared to the roaring in my ears. The room was a blur of motion. Aunt Martha was crying her hands over her mouth. Uncle Joe was helping me, his hands firm under my arm, trying to lift me. Gabe, my God, are you all right? Someone call the police. But I wasn't looking at him. I wasn't looking at anyone. My one good eye, the one that wasn't swelling shut, was locked on my son. Mark. He was standing frozen in the middle of the room. He was trembling, his face a ghostly white. Everyone was looking at him. This was the moment. The final absolute test. His father bleeding on the floor. His wife panting like a rabid animal, her hand still curled. He had to choose. The silence in the room was deafening, a vacuum waiting for him to fill it. Mark, I whispered the word thick with blood and pain. Son, help me. I saw his body tense. I saw his eyes wide with panic dart from me to her. Amelia wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him. Her stare was a challenge, a command. Choose. He took a deep, shuddering breath. I saw his fists clench at his sides. Come on, son. Come on, Mark. Be the man I raised. Be the boy who loved his father. He took a step. My heart leaped. He was coming to me. But he didn't. He took one step, then another, walking right past my kneeling form, right past Uncle Joe, who was still trying to get me to my feet. He walked until he was standing directly in front of his wife. He turned, placing his body between her and the rest of the room. He shielded her. The room went absolutely still. See? Mark's voice was high, cracking with a wild, hysterical energy. He pointed at me. He pointed at me, the man on the floor. See what you did? Dad, you pushed her, you insulted her, you drove her to it. I finally got to my feet, leaning heavily on the toppled chair. I could feel the hot, wet blood on my cheek. I stared at him, at my son, who was standing there defending the woman who had just assaulted me. Mark, when I said, and the disbelief was so profound it choked me. Mark, she just hit me. She hit your father. I watched him. I watched his face. He looked at me, at my swollen, bleeding eye. He looked at the horrified faces of his aunt, his uncle, his friends. And then, something changed. The fear in his eyes, it just vanished. It was replaced by something else. Something hard. Something I had never seen in him. It was pride. He stood up straighter. He puffed out his chest, his chin coming up. He wasn't the weak, trembling boy anymore. He was a man who had finally made a definitive choice. He had chosen her. He looked right at me, right at my ruined face, and he spoke. His voice was no longer high and panicked. It was loud. It was clear. It was proud. That's my wife, he announced, his voice ringing with conviction, projecting to every corner of the room. I saw Amelia just behind his shoulder. A small, slow, triumphant smile spread across her face. The smirk of a predator who had just watched her mate make his first kill. Mark didn't see it. He only saw me. "She did what she had to do," he shouted, his voice rising full of this new terrible strength. "She put him in his place. She finally taught him to shut up. She taught him what respect looks like. My son, my boy." He was proud. He was proud that his wife had beaten his father into silence. In that moment, the physical pain, the throbbing eye, the bleeding, it all just disappeared. It was replaced by a vast, cold emptiness. The space where my heart had been, the boy I had raised. He was gone. He was truly, finally gone. The last thread had been cut. The room was dead silent, frozen in the aftershock of his horrible, proud words. And then, from the front entryway, a new sound. Clap. A single, slow, deliberate clap. Clap. It was loud. It cut through the stunned silence like a gunshot. Clap. Every head, including Mark's and Amelia's, snapped toward the front door. Standing in the grand archway of the living room, silhouetted against the bright light of the hall, was my brother. Ben. He wasn't in his retirement polo shirt. He was wearing his armor. A dark, perfectly tailored three-piece suit. The kind he wore into hostile boardrooms, the kind he wore when he was about to financially destroy someone. And he was not alone. Standing just behind him, flanking him on either side, were two uniformed police officers. Their faces were impassive, and their hands rested near their belts. They were not here for my birthday cake. Ben's eyes swept the room, taking in the entire scene with the cold, rapid assessment of a shark. He saw the toppled oak chair. He saw Aunt Martha, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. He saw Amelia still breathing hard, her face flushed with her victory. He saw Mark standing protectively over her, still puffed up with his horrible pride. And then he saw me. He saw my face. My swollen, bleeding eye. I watched his jaw clench just for a second. It was the only flicker of emotion he allowed. He started walking slowly into the room, his expensive shoes silent on the thick carpet. He didn't look at the officers. He didn't look at the horrified guests. He walked right past Amelia as if she were a piece of furniture. He walked right past Mark. He stopped when he was standing directly in front of me. I was still leaning on the overturned chair, the room spinning, my face on fire. He looked at my eye. He looked at the blood on my shirt. He leaned in close enough for only me to hear, and his voice was a low, calm rumble, completely at odds with the chaos. "Happy birthday, brother." I just nodded, my one good eye fixed on him. I had never been so happy to see him in my life. Ben turned. He didn't face Amelia. Not yet. He turned and faced my son. He faced Mark. Mark was still standing there, defiant, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked at Ben, then at the officers, and I could see the confusion warring with his anger. "Uncle Ben," Mark said, his voice still trying to hold on to that false, aggressive strength. "What is this? What are the police doing here? This is a private family matter. You need to leave. You're trespassing." "Am I?" Ben said. He almost smiled. It was not a nice smile. "That was quite a speech, nephew." Mark's face tightened. What speech?" "The one you just gave," Ben said, gesturing to the silent, horrified room. "The one where you announced so proudly that your wife, what was it, put him in his place and taught him to shut up." Ben took one casual step closer. Mark instinctively took a step back, bumping into Amelia. "You see, Mark," Ben continued, his voice dangerously soft, "I'm just a lawyer. I tend to think about things in legal terms. And what you just did right here in front of all of these witnesses," he gestured to Uncle Joe and Aunt Martha, who were watching, their faces pale. "What you just did was publicly admit to being an accomplice to assault and battery. Conspiracy to commit assault, actually. It's a felony." The pride, the hardness, all of it just shattered. The color drained from Mark's face. He looked like the weak, terrified boy he had always been. "What? That's ridiculous. I was defending my wife. He scared her." "Of course you were," Ben said, nodding as if agreeing with a child. "And the court will be fascinated to hear that. Especially when we play them the video." Video. It wasn't Mark who spoke. It was Amelia. Her voice was a sharp, sudden shriek. "What video?" Ben turned. He finally looked at Amelia. He looked at her as if she were a bug he'd found on his shoe. He gave her that same cold, empty smile. "The video, my dear," he said, "from the 3 active motion-activated high-definition cameras that have been recording this entire room for the past 2 days." He pointed up. He pointed with one long, steady finger right at the smoke detector above the mantelpiece. The one I had installed. "That one," he said. He pointed to the USB charger I had plugged into the wall near the kitchen doorway. "That one." He pointed to another, a small black square I hadn't even known about, tucked neatly into the bookshelf, aimed at the exact spot where I had fallen. "And that one." All 3 are streaming live, by the way. Have been for 48 hours. He turned back to Mark and Amelia. Their faces. My God, their faces. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't just panic. It was the sudden, sickening, absolute realization of a trap sprung. It was the look of 2 animals who had been so focused on their prey that they had just heard the click of the cage door locking permanently behind them. Amelia's face, that mask of pure, primal panic, flickered. She looked at the smoke detector. She looked at the USB charger by the kitchen door. She looked at Ben. Her mind was scrambling, calculating, trying to find an escape route. She saw the 2 officers take a deliberate step forward, their hands now off their belts, ready. And so she did the only thing she could. She lied. "You can't," she shrieked, her voice so high and thin it barely sounded human. "You can't prove anything. It's illegal. You can't record me in my own home. It's inadmissible." Mark beside her just looked like he was going to be sick. Ben actually chuckled. It was a low, cold, terrible sound. "Inadmissible. My dear, this isn't a simple divorce proceeding. This is a criminal investigation. And in this state, consent is only required from one party in a conversation. And I can assure you, my brother, the legal owner of this house, gave his full consent." The officers moved, stepping past the horrified guests. "Ma'am." The first one started, his voice firm. Amelia's panic turned to pure, cornered hysteria. She backed away, stumbling into the very chair I had fallen over. "No, get away from me!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. I was still standing by the wall, my hand pressed to my throbbing eye. "He's lying. He's the one. He's senile. He's a confused, violent old man. Ask anyone. He's been having episodes. He threatened me. I hit him in self-defense. He's crazy." She was throwing every lie she had at the wall, hoping one would stick. Ben just stood there, watching her frantic, desperate performance with a look of almost academic interest. He waited until she had to take a gasping breath. He looked at the officers. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice perfectly calm, cutting through her hysteria. "I believe you have probable cause. Please arrest Mrs. Foster." He paused, tilting his head slightly, as if correcting a complex legal footnote. "My apologies," he said, his voice sharp and clear, silencing the entire room. "I mean, please arrest Ms. Amelia Shaw." Mark's head, which had been buried in his hands, snapped up. "What?" Ben's eyes remained locked on Amelia. Her face had just gone completely, utterly white. "Or perhaps," Ben continued, his voice resonating with pure, cold satisfaction, "we should use the name Peterson. It gets so confusing, doesn't it, when you've had so many?" This was the moment. Ben walked over to the coffee table, the one Sarah and I had bought on our 20th anniversary, and he dropped a thick, spiral-bound file onto it. It landed with a heavy, final, damning thud. "You see, Amelia," Ben said, I've been waiting 5 years for this. Ever since my brother in his infinite naive wisdom decided to let you into this family, I've been waiting. He tapped the cover of the file. Amelia Shaw, also known as Amelia Peterson. Now, Amelia Foster, a professional grifter specializing in elder fraud operating primarily out of Reno, Nevada. A collective gasp went through the room. Aunt Martha grabbed Uncle Joe's arm, her knuckles white. "He's a liar!" Amelia screamed. "He's making it all up. You have no proof." "Don't I?" Ben said. He flipped open the file, not even looking at her, addressing the room. Husband number 1, Richard Peterson, aged 64, a small business owner, married 2013, died 2014. Cause of death, an accidental fall, down the stairs. Left you a house and a tidy insurance policy. Mark was staring at her, his mouth open, a small choked sound coming from his throat. "Amelia, what is he?" Ben didn't let him finish. His voice was a hammer. Husband number 2, Frank Shaw, aged 68, a retired trucker, married 2016, died. Oh, just 18 months later, 2018. Cause of death, accidental food poisoning, botulism, so terribly unlucky. He left you his entire pension fund and his life savings. Ben finally looked up from the file, his eyes drilling into hers. 2 husbands, both in their 60s, both dead from convenient accidents within 2 years of marrying you. And then, you meet my brother, 70 years old, recently widowed, sitting alone in a paid-for house worth $1.5 million. He slammed the file shut, the sound echoing the crack of her hand against my face. "You didn't just have bad luck, Amelia. You have a playbook, and you just tried to run the same play on a Foster. Unlucky for you," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This family has lawyers." The first officer took her arm. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." "No, get off me!" she shrieked, trying to pull away, her expensive dress twisting. Mark, do something. Tell them he's lying. Tell them you love me." Mark was completely paralyzed. He was staring at her, his face a mask of dawning, sickening horror. He looked broken. "Amelia," he whispered. His voice was that of a small, lost child. What is he talking about? Fell downstairs? Food poisoning? What did you—" Ben stepped in, his voice sharp, cutting off Mark's pathetic stammering. "Oh, she'll have plenty of time to explain it to you, Mark," Ben said, his eyes drilling into my son. "Unless, of course, you'd rather she talk about your little secret." Mark flinched as if he'd been slapped. "Or perhaps," Ben continued, "you want to be the one to tell your Aunt Martha and Uncle Joe about the $80,000 gambling debt you owe to a certain loan shark in Reno." Mark just collapsed. It wasn't a physical fall, but an internal one. The last ounce of his pride, his fabricated anger, just evaporated, leaving a hollow, trembling shell. He stared at Ben, his mouth opening and closing silently. He turned his head slowly, mechanically, to look at Amelia. She was standing rigid, held firmly by the officer, her face a mask of pure, silent fury. "Reno," Mark whispered, his voice cracking. Gambling debt." He was looking at her, his eyes wide and vacant, with a dawning, sickening understanding. You told me it was an investment. A short-term bridge loan for your online business. You lied to me." Amelia just spat at him. "You idiot. You weak, pathetic idiot. You believed me." I pushed myself away from the wall. The room was still spinning. My eye was a massive, throbbing ball of pain, but I didn't care. I needed him to see me. I needed to finish this. I walked forward past Aunt Martha's gasp, past Uncle Joe's steadying hand. I stopped right in front of my son. I let him look at my face, at the blood on my cheek, at the eye that was already swollen, completely shut. "We know everything, son," I said. My voice was quiet, rough, and dead. He flinched, finally looking at my injury, finally registering what his wife had done. Dad, I... I didn't... We have the video, Mark, I said, cutting him off. The time for his excuses was over. We have the recording from the study, from 2 nights ago. His face, if possible, went even paler. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. We have the video of you and her, I said, letting the words land hard and heavy, sitting at my desk, practicing my signature for the loan applications. We have the video of you holding the paper steady for her. Oh, Mark, Aunt Martha whispered from behind me. It was a sound of pure, profound disappointment. That's called conspiracy to commit felony fraud, nephew. Ben's voice boomed from the side. He had moved to stand beside me, a united front. He was the law. I was the victim. It's also wire fraud. Ben continued, ticking points off on his fingers. It's elder abuse, it's forgery, and it's all on a high-definition audio and video feed that is already in the possession of the district attorney's office. We just showed them. Mark looked back and forth between us, his mind clearly unable to process the speed of his downfall. She was the architect, Ben said, gesturing with his chin toward Amelia, who was now just staring at the floor, silent. No doubt. She's the professional. She's the one with the history of dead husbands and convenient accidents. She's the one who was planning to push you down the stairs, Gabe. A low moan came from the guests in the room. But you... Ben took a step closer to Mark, his voice dropping to a low, terrible growl. You, Mark. You were the accomplice. You were the inside man. You were the key. No, Mark choked out. She made me. The debt. The loan sharks. She didn't make you do anything, I said, my voice rising. She didn't make you turn your back when she assaulted your father. She didn't make you stand there and proudly announce to a room full of people that she was right to do it. I jabbed a finger at him, my whole hand shaking with the force of my rage. That was you. That was your choice. She gave you the opportunity, and you chose. You chose her. You chose the money. You chose this poison, over your own blood. The second officer, who had been standing back, moved forward. Ms. Shaw, he said, his voice flat and bored, you are under arrest for assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, and suspicion of attempted murder. Please put your hands behind your back. The sound of the handcuffs, the metallic, definitive click, 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 as they closed around Amelia's wrists, was the loudest sound in the room. She didn't fight. She didn't scream anymore. The performance was over. She just stood there, limp, defeated. Mark watched it. He watched them put his wife, the woman he had just defended, the woman he had chosen, into handcuffs. He watched the officer read her Miranda rights, his voice a dull monotone. You have the right to remain silent. Mark's eyes slid from his wife's cuffed hands to my bleeding face. He looked at me. And in that one terrible, agonizing moment, the full, catastrophic weight of what he had done, of what he had lost, of the choice he had just made, it all came crashing down on him. His face didn't just crumple, it imploded. Dad, he choked, taking one desperate, stumbling step toward me. Dad, oh God. Dad, I'm sorry. He looked like that 10-year-old boy again, the one who had struck out, his face collapsing in tears. But I wasn't the father in the dugout anymore. I wasn't the man who would run out and put his arm around him and tell him it was all going to be okay. That man was gone. He had killed him just as surely as Amelia had planned to. I just looked at him, my one good eye cold and empty. The officers were efficient. They took Amelia by the arm, one on each side. The fight was gone. All that venomous rage, that reptilian coldness, it had all collapsed inward. She was just a woman. A defeated, pale woman in an expensive dress with her hands cuffed behind her back. She wasn't smirking anymore. As the officers started to walk her toward the door, she stopped. She turned her body, twisting, and looked back at Mark. He was still standing there, a statue of his own destruction, tears streaming down his face. "Mark!" she shrieked, and her voice was no longer a hiss. It was a raw, ugly, desperate sound. "You're not going to let them do this, Mark. You promised." Mark just shook his head, incoherent sounds coming from his throat. And then her face changed. The desperation vanished, replaced by a pure, final, acidic hatred. A hatred for him. For his weakness. "You'll regret this, Mark," she screamed, her voice echoing through the silent, horrified room. "You spineless, useless fool! You're coming down with me. You're going to rot right next to me, you hear me? You'll pay for this." The officers didn't wait. They pulled her struggling and cursing out of the living room, down the hall I had built, and out the front door I had hung. The sound of the door slamming shut was final. She was gone. The room was left in a ringing, painful silence. The only sound was the one coming from my son. He just crumpled. His legs gave out, and he sank to the floor, right onto the carpet where I had fallen. He landed on his knees, his hands covering his face, and he began to sob. It was not the sound of a man. It was the sound of a child. Deep, gasping, broken sobs that tore through his entire body. "Dad," he wailed, his voice muffled by his hands. "Dad, I didn't know. I didn't know about the other husbands. I didn't know about the stairs. I swear, Dad, I didn't know she was that." He looked up at me, his face a mess of tears and snot and shame. I was stupid. I was so stupid. The gambling, it got out of control, and she said she could fix it. She said it was easy. She tricked me, Dad. I swear. I was tricked. I just stood there, my hand still pressed to my bleeding eye. The pain was a dull, heavy pounding drum. I watched him on the floor. My son, my 42-year-old son, weeping like a baby, trying to wash away his choices with his tears. He was looking at me with those same eyes he'd had when he was 10, when he'd struck out desperate for me to come and fix it, to make it okay, to tell him he wasn't a failure. But the man he was crying to was gone. The man he had defended his wife against. "You knew," I said. My voice was cold. It was flat. There was no anger left in it. No pain. There was just nothing. He sniffled, wiping his nose on the sleeve of his expensive suit. What? What? No, Dad. I just told you." "You knew," I repeated louder this time. I took a step toward him. He flinched. "You didn't know about the accidents, maybe. You didn't know she was a killer, maybe. But that doesn't matter." I stood over him. He was a pathetic, broken thing on my floor. "You knew," I said, my voice like stone. "You knew she was a liar. You knew about the $80,000 debt. You knew when you sat in my study and watched her practice forging my name. You knew when you held the paper steady for her." He shrank back, the truth hitting him. "You knew," I said, the final words landing like hammers. "You knew when you stood right here in this room and watched her punch your 70-year-old father in the face. You knew when you stepped in front of her. You knew when you defended her. When you told this entire room that she was right to do it." I looked at him, kneeling there, my own blood still drying on my cheek. "She didn't trick you, Mark," I said. "She just showed you who you really were, and you chose." He had no answer. He just wept. I had my answer. I had given him his final chance, and he had failed. He had chosen. I turned my back on him. I couldn't look at him anymore. I couldn't look at the ruin of the boy I had raised. I faced my brother. Ben was standing there, his face grim, watching. He understood. "Ben," I said, my voice hoarse, "get him out of my house." The weeks that followed were a quiet, gray blur. The party guests, my friends and family, left that night in stunned, horrified silence. Ben stayed. He handled the police. He handled the insurance statements for my injury. He handled the press who showed up like vultures the next morning when the news of Amelia's arrest broke. He handled everything. Amelia faced a mountain of charges. Assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder exploitation. Ben's files from Reno combined with the video recordings made the case airtight. She was denied bail. She was going to prison for a very, very long time. And Mark, my son, he did what he always does. He saved himself. Faced with his own conspiracy and fraud charges, he crumbled. He testified against his wife. He told the district attorney everything about the gambling, the $80,000 debt, the loan sharks, the forgery. He gave them a full weeping confession, painting himself as the victim, the weak-willed husband manipulated by a master criminal. It worked. In exchange for his testimony, he was convicted of felony fraud, but his sentence was suspended. Probation, community service, fines. He avoided jail. But he was a convicted felon. He had lost his job. He had lost his wife. And he had lost his father. I am sitting on the floor of the living room, my back against the wall. The house is completely, utterly empty. We had the estate sale last week. The expensive modern furniture Amelia had bought with my money. The leather sofa she and Mark had lounged on. The granite-topped kitchen island. It's all gone. So is Sarah's armchair. And the beds. And the dining table where we held 40 years of Thanksgiving dinners. Even the narrow bed in Mark's old room. It's all been sold. Liquidated. The house is just a shell. A box of echoes. The afternoon sun streams in through the bare windows, illuminating the scuff marks on the hardwood floor where our lives used to be. It's no longer a home. It's just an asset. A property. The front door opens. The sound of dress shoes on the bare wood floor is sharp, loud, like gunshots in the silence. Ben walks in. He's not in his lawyer suit, just slacks and a polo shirt. He looks tired. He looks almost as old as I feel. He stops in the middle of the empty room holding his leather briefcase. Well, he says, his voice flat. It's done. I just nod. I wait. I already know. He opens the briefcase, pulls out a single folder, and hands it down to me. I don't get up. The sale closed this morning, he says. We got our asking price. $1.5 million. The money is in escrow. It's over, Gabe, officially. I stare at the closing statement. $1.5 million. The price of the life Sarah and I built, sold to a developer from out of state who will probably tear it down and build townhouses. I fold the paper. It's just a number. It doesn't feel real. Good, I say. My voice is hoarse. Good. Now it can begin. Ben frowns, running a hand over his face. Begin. What begins, Gabe? You're 70 years old. You're set for life. You can buy a place anywhere in the world. You can rest. I push myself up off the floor, my knees cracking in protest. I walk to the bare wall where the fireplace used to be, where Amelia threw Sarah's pictures in a box. The foundation, I say. The Sarah Foster Cancer Fund. It begins now. Call your people at the bank. I want every cent of that $1.5 million transferred into the new account by the end of the day. Every last penny. Ben just stands there. He's not the triumphant lawyer anymore. He just looks sad. Gabe, he says, his voice quiet, all the anger and strategy gone. Are you sure all of it? It was always for her. You know that. I know, he says. But, Mark, I turn, my heart clenching, but my face remains a mask of stone. What about him? He's your son, Ben insists, almost pleading. He's a convicted felon with no job, no wife, and not a dollar to his name. He is... He is ruined, Gabe. This money, even just a small part of it, it would, what, Ben? I cut him off. My voice is sharp cold. It would be another bailout, another rescue, another fund for him to gamble away, another down payment for another Amelia. He is your son, Ben says again, as if the word itself is a magic spell that should fix everything. He's your blood. He's all you have left. I look at my brother, the old fox, the man who saved my life, and he still, after all this, doesn't understand. I walk to the window looking out at the bare brown yard, the yard where I taught Mark to ride his bike, the yard where he stood over me defending the woman who had just struck me. He made his choice, Ben. My voice is final. There is no anger in it, no pain, just the same vast, cold emptiness as the room around me. He made his choice. The sun is different here. In my new apartment, it comes in clean through a wide, spotless balcony door, illuminating the pale, calm beige walls. It doesn't cast the long accusatory shadows that the old house did. It's quiet. I live on the 12th floor. I don't hear the slam of kitchen cabinets, the hiss of whispered arguments through an oak door, or the crunch of tires on a gravel driveway. I just hear the distant, gentle hum of the city, which is its own kind of peace. It has been 1 year. I am sitting at a simple wooden desk. It is not the grand mahogany fortress I once had. It is just a desk. In front of me are grant applications. I look at the letterhead. The Sarah Foster Cancer Fund. It's real. Ben made it real. The $1.5 million we got from that empty, echoing shell of a house is now here in this fund working. It's helping women at the county hospital paying for treatments they can't afford. It's buying new equipment for the oncology wing. Sarah's legacy. It's the only thing that makes sense anymore. I am 71 years old. I volunteer here at the Foundation's small administrative office 3 days a week. It gives me a place to go. It gives me a purpose that isn't just surviving. The intercom on the wall buzzes. The sound is ugly and sharp in the quiet afternoon. I'm not expecting anyone. Ben is in court. The social worker isn't due until tomorrow. I press the button. Yes. There's a long, static-filled pause. Dad. The voice is thin, hesitant. I haven't heard it in 12 months. Not since the sentencing. Dad, it's Mark. Can I come up? Just for a minute. Please. My hand freezes on the desk. My pen stops moving. I should say no. Ben would tell me to say no. Ben would tell me to hang up. I'm not here to. I just need to see you. I press the button to unlock the lobby door. I don't know why. Maybe because after everything he is still my son. Or maybe I just need to see what a year of consequences looks like. I wait. I don't go to the door. I just sit at my desk, my heart a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. I hear the elevator ding down the hall. I hear the soft shuffling footsteps. He's hesitant. He's afraid. Good. He should be. A quiet knock. It's open? I call out. The door opens slowly, just a few inches. He peeks his head in as if expecting me to throw something at him. Dad. He steps inside and I almost don't recognize him. The man I remember, the one who stood proudly and defended his wife. He was soft. He was puffed up with easy living and entitlement. His suits were expensive. His face was smooth. This man is 10 years older. His hair is thinner, cut short, ruthlessly practical. The expensive suit is gone. He's wearing a simple, worn flannel work shirt, faded jeans, and heavy work boots caked with dirt. He is thin, not unhealthy, but weathered. The softness is gone, burned away. He's holding something in his hand. He's clutching it so tightly, his knuckles are white. He just stands there by the door, not daring to come further into the room. "What do you want, Mark?" I ask. My voice is flat. Not angry, not sad, just tired. I wanted you to see this," he says. His voice is rough. He takes a step forward and holds out his hand. It's a chip, a small bronze-colored, cheap-looking coin. It's my one-year chip," he says, his voice cracking. "From GA, Gamblers Anonymous. 1 year. Today." I look at the coin. 1 year of not being the man who lost $80,000. 1 year of not holding the paper steady. 365 days of choosing not to be the man who defended his wife's violence. He looks at his shoes. They are old, cracked leather. "Dad," he says, the words rushing out of him, desperate. I am not here for money. I swear. I swear on Mom's memory. I'm not here to ask for anything. I don't want anything." "Then why are you here, Mark?" I wanted to tell you." He takes a deep, ragged breath. "I'm working. I got a job. At the lumber yard. Out by the highway. In the receiving department." He looks up at me, his eyes clear for the first time in his life. "It's manual labor. It's heavy. I unload trucks all day. But it's honest, Dad. It's honest work. I get a paycheck. A real one. And I'm paying my fines. My community service is done." He looks back down at the chip in his hand. "And I'm sorry," he whispers. The words are so quiet I almost don't hear them. "I'm so sorry. I know I'm weak. I know I'm papa. I know I always was. I was a coward. I was so scared. Of her, of the debt, of you, of failing you." He finally looks me in the eye, and his are full of tears. But he's not sobbing. He's not the broken child on the floor. He's just a man telling a terrible truth. "I'm sorry for all of it. I'm sorry I let her in. I'm sorry I held the paper. I'm sorry I defended her. When she hit you, that was the worst. I'm sorry, Dad, for everything." I look at him. I look at the work boots. I look at the hands that are no longer soft but chapped and rough. I look at the 1-year chip. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. The anger. The white-hot, burning, acidic rage that has been my companion for this past year. The rage that I woke up with and went to sleep with. It's gone. It's just gone. All that's left is this vast, cold, quiet emptiness. And him, the ruin of my son. "Weakness is a choice, Mark," I say. My voice is quiet. "I've learned that. It's a choice just like strength is." He just nods, swallowing, accepting it. I know I'm trying to choose better. I turn away from him. I look at the papers on my desk. The grant applications for the foundation. Sarah's foundation. "I didn't plan on this," I say mostly to myself. "I didn't plan on ever seeing you again." I pick up my pen. I look at the logo. The Sarah Foster Cancer Fund. The foundation. "We need a part-time administrator," I say. The words are coming out before I've even formed them. "It's just data entry, filing applications, basic office work. It pays minimum wage. It's 20 hours a week. It's not heavy, but it's honest." He just stares at me, his face blank with shock. "Dad." "What?" "It's not a gift," I say, cutting him off. I turn in my chair to face him fully. "It's a job, and it comes with conditions. You will not be late. You will not make excuses, and you will not ever lie to me again." I pause, letting the last, most important part land. And you will report directly to your Uncle Ben. I watch him. This is the test. Minimum wage. Reporting to the man who orchestrated his downfall. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't look at the floor. He doesn't make an excuse. He just nods, the tears finally overflowing, tracking clean lines through the day's grime on his face. Yes, he says, his voice thick. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. I turn back to my desk. I pick up my pen. I can't look at him anymore. Don't thank me, I say, my voice rough. Thank your mother. She's the one giving you this chance. Her fund, her rules. I point with my pen to the door. Be here Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Ben. Ben hates it when people are late. I will be. Thank you. I hear his footsteps quiet retreating. I hear the door open. I hear it click softly shut. I am alone again. I look at the application in front of me. A woman needs help paying for her radiation. I sign the approval. The house was just wood and glass and nails. It was just a thing. It's gone. Amelia is in prison. Mark is a broken man starting at the bottom. But the foundation, Sarah's foundation, that is real. The real legacy wasn't the house I built with my hands. It was this, the integrity I thought I had lost, the chance to build something new, something that lasts, something that actually helps. I pick up the next application. It's time to get to work. The biggest lesson I learned is that weakness at times can be more dangerous than malice. I mistook kindness for blindness, allowing my family to take advantage of me without even realizing it. I learned that family is not a free pass for abuse, and that integrity matters more than blood. When my son chose to protect the wife who had assaulted me, I knew I was forced to choose. I chose to protect my legacy, to protect the truth over a relationship that was completely destroyed. Standing up for myself, even at 70 years old, is never too late. What do you think? Was I too harsh on Mark, or was his betrayal unforgivable? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe that protecting the truth is the right thing to do, please hit like and subscribe to hear more of my stories.